Imagine uploading your favorite song to a website and discovering it could play forever. Not just on repeat, but as an ever-evolving, seamlessly looping version that never quite sounds the same twice. This isn't science fiction. It's the reality of a groundbreaking piece of software that emerged from a hackathon weekend in 2012 and offered a fascinating glimpse into the future of algorithmic music. What happens when a computer can analyze the DNA of any song and reconstruct it to last forever? The answer lies in a project that began as a weekend experiment and became one of the internet's most fascinating explorations of algorithmic music manipulation. Welcome to Vanishing Threads. Today we're exploring the story of the infinite jukebox, a piece of software that takes any song and makes it potentially eternal. The story begins in November 2012 at the Boston Music Hack Day held at MIT. Music Hack Days were relatively new events where programmers, musicians, and music technology enthusiasts gathered for weekend-long coding marathons, creating innovative projects that pushed the boundaries of how we interact with sound. These events typically resulted in clever widgets, novel music visualizations, or experimental composition tools. Most projects lived and died within the weekend, remembered only by their creators and a handful of fellow hackers. Paul Lamere, director of the developer platform at the Echo Nest, arrived at the MIT event with a different kind of ambition. The Echo Nest was a music intelligence company that specialized in audio analysis. Their algorithms could break down any song into its constituent parts, identifying everything from tempo and key to the emotional content and even the danceability of a track. Lamere had been working with this technology professionally, but the Hack Day represented an opportunity to explore its creative possibilities without commercial constraints. The concept he developed was deceptively simple, yet technically sophisticated. The infinite jukebox would take any uploaded song, send it to the Echo Nest's servers for analysis, where it would be decomposed into individual beats. Each beat would then be analyzed and matched to other beats within the same song that sounded similar. The software would identify these sonic similarities and create a web of possible pathways through the song, jumping between similar sections to create a version that could theoretically play forever whilst maintaining musical coherence. The technical implementation required solving several complex problems. First, the system needed to identify beats with precision, not just the obvious rhythmic pulses, but the subtle sonic fingerprints that make one moment in a song similar to another. The Echo Nest's analysis engine examined dozens of acoustic properties for each segment: harmonic content, rhythmic patterns, timbral qualities, and spectral characteristics. But similarity wasn't enough. The algorithm also had to ensure that transitions between similar beats sounded natural. A jump from the first verse to the second verse might work perfectly if the harmonic and rhythmic contexts aligned, but the same transition could sound jarring if attempted at the wrong moment. The software needed to understand not just which beats were similar, but when those similarities could be exploited for seamless transitions. The result was a visual and auditory experience unlike anything that had existed before. Users could upload a song and watch as the system generated a circular visualization, a kind of musical map showing all possible pathways through the track. Each dot represented a beat, connected by lines showing potential transition points. As the song played, a cursor moved around this circle, occasionally jumping to different sections when it encountered a viable loop point. The genius of the system lay in its unpredictability. Unlike a simple loop, which becomes tiresome through repetition, the infinite jukebox created the sensation of listening to a familiar song that was simultaneously discovering new versions of itself. A track might play through normally for several minutes before finding a transition point that sent it spiraling back to an earlier section, creating extended versions of particularly engaging moments. Favorite solos could repeat multiple times before the algorithm found its way back to the main progression, or entire verses might be skipped as the system jumped directly from one chorus to another. The project's impact was immediate and substantial. The project was widely used by listeners worldwide who spent countless hours exploring infinite versions of their favorite songs. The appeal wasn't just novelty. Users discovered that certain songs worked remarkably well with the system, revealing hidden structures and creating genuinely compelling listening experiences. Some tracks proved particularly suited to infinite treatment, songs with strong repetitive elements, certain types of electronic music, progressive rock with recurring motifs, or pop songs with consistent rhythmic patterns, could be transformed into hypnotic, evolving soundscapes. Dance music, with its emphasis on rhythmic consistency, often produced infinite versions that felt like extended club mixes, created by an algorithmic DJ with perfect timing and an infinite attention span. The project also offered an interesting perspective on musical composition. Listeners observed that songs that seemed simple on casual listening could reveal complex internal structures when subjected to the infinite jukebox treatment. Conversely, some apparently sophisticated compositions seemed to have limited internal similarity, resulting in infinite versions that quickly exhausted their potential variations. The technology behind the infinite jukebox represented a significant leap forward in automated music analysis. The Echo Nest's approach combined machine learning, data mining, and digital signal processing techniques, making their analysis data available to developers via an API used by thousands of developers to build independent music applications. The Infinite Jukebox demonstrated the creative potential of this technology, showing how analytical tools designed for recommendation systems and music discovery could be repurposed for artistic expression. The success of the project contributed to the Echo Nest's growing prominence in the music technology sector. The company's sophisticated understanding of musical structure and content eventually attracted the attention of Spotify, which acquired the Echo Nest in 2014. The analytical techniques that powered the Infinite Jukebox became part of Spotify's recommendation algorithms, influencing how millions of users discover new music. But the story of the Infinite Jukebox extends beyond its initial success. As music streaming services evolved and licensing agreements became more restrictive, the original project faced technical challenges. The Echo Nest's API, which had powered the analysis, was eventually discontinued as Spotify integrated the technology into their proprietary systems. However, the concept proved resilient. 10 years after its creation, Paul Lamere reflected on the project's lasting impact, noting how it had inspired numerous similar projects and influenced thinking about algorithmic music manipulation. The core idea that songs contain hidden structures that can be exploited to create infinite variations had become part of the broader conversation about computational creativity and the future of musical experience. The project also raised profound questions about the nature of musical works themselves. If a song can be algorithmically extended forever whilst maintaining its essential character, what does that suggest about the boundaries of a musical composition? The Infinite Jukebox treated songs not as fixed objects, but as raw material for ongoing creative processes, a perspective that anticipated later developments in algorithmic music generation and AI-assisted composition. In many ways, the Infinite Jukebox was prophetic. It anticipated a future where the lines between composition, performance, and listening would blur, where algorithms would become creative collaborators, and where the traditional concept of a finished musical work would give way to more fluid, processual approaches to musical experience. The project's visual interface was also noteworthy. The circular representation of musical structure, with its web of possible pathways, has been seen as a possible inspiration for subsequent music visualization projects. The idea that complex algorithmic processes could be made comprehensible through elegant visual design influenced how developers approached the challenge of making sophisticated music technology accessible to general audiences. Perhaps most significantly, the Infinite Jukebox demonstrated that weekend hack projects could have lasting cultural impact. In an era where music technology was dominated by large corporations and expensive professional software, Lamere's project showed that a single developer with a creative idea and access to the right analytical tools could create something genuinely innovative and broadly appealing. The concept has continued to evolve. Various developers have created spiritual successors and alternative implementations, often adapting to changes in music streaming technology and copyright environments. Some projects have expanded the core concept, allowing users to create infinite versions that blend multiple songs or that respond to real-time input. Others have simplified the approach, focusing on ease of use over analytical sophistication. The Infinite Jukebox also highlighted the importance of open access to music analysis tools. The project's success was only possible because the Echo Nest made their sophisticated analytical capabilities available to external developers. As the music technology landscape has consolidated around a few major platforms, questions about access to such tools have become increasingly relevant for independent developers and experimental projects. It also caught the attention of some musicians and critics interested in the aesthetic possibilities of repetition and variation. Musicians began experimenting with the aesthetic possibilities suggested by infinite, self-varying compositions. Some incorporated similar concepts into their own work, creating pieces designed to exploit algorithmic remixing or structuring compositions to maximize their potential for interesting variations. Music critics and theorists also took notice, seeing in the Infinite Jukebox a practical demonstration of ideas about musical structure, repetition, and variation that had previously existed mainly in academic discourse. The project made abstract concepts about musical form tangible and experientially accessible. The influence can be seen in subsequent developments in music streaming interfaces, which have increasingly incorporated visual representations of musical structure and interactive elements that allow users to manipulate their listening experience. The idea that listeners might want to engage with songs as malleable, explorable objects rather than fixed linear experiences has become part of the broader evolution of digital music consumption. Today, more than a decade after its creation, the Infinite Jukebox stands as a landmark project in computational creativity. It demonstrated that sophisticated analysis of cultural works could yield new forms of cultural expression, that weekend hack projects could have lasting influence, and that the boundaries between consumption and creation in digital media were more permeable than previously imagined. The project's legacy lies not just in its technical innovations, but in its demonstration that algorithms could be creative partners rather than merely analytical tools. It showed that the systematic analysis of artistic works could reveal hidden creative possibilities, and that these possibilities could be made accessible to audiences without technical expertise. The story of the Infinite Jukebox is ultimately about the unexpected creative potential that emerges when analytical technologies are applied with imagination and technical skill. It reminds us that in the digital age, the most interesting innovations often come from individuals who see creative possibilities in tools designed for entirely different purposes. What started as a weekend experiment in algorithmic music manipulation became a demonstration of how technology could extend and transform artistic experience. In making songs potentially infinite, the Infinite Jukebox didn't just change how we might listen to music. It challenged how we think about what music could be. The Infinite Jukebox was more than just a clever piece of code. It was a question posed to the future of art. It demonstrated that the tools we build to analyze our culture can also be used to transform it, blurring the lines between the creator, the listener, and the algorithm. As we venture deeper into an age of computational creativity, the echoes of this weekend project from 2012 continue to resonate, reminding us that sometimes the most profound innovations begin with a simple, playful question. What if it never had to end? Thanks for tuning in, and remember, stay curious, stay safe,